1962 was a historic year for the world of cinema. Disney had created the first animatronic ever and used it in the Mary Poppins movie. WED also developed the first audio animatronics that could imitate real life to use them at Disney parks. After these technological advances, many would follow in Disney's footsteps. This resulted in thousands of the most classic and emblematic creatures of cinema being brought to life. Chucky.
Hi, I'm Andy. What's your name? Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Heidi-ho.
If you're a horror fan, you've undoubtedly heard the name Kevin Yagher. He has worked for more than 30 years in the industry, and his company has created and designed incredible characters, such as Freddy Krueger or the Crypt Keeper from Tales of the Crypt. But without a doubt, one of Yeager's most important legacies is the design of one of the most terrifying characters in cinema, Chucky. Chucky was first seen in the 1988 movie Child's Play. The film tells the story of a doll who's possessed by the spirit of a serial killer. It was directed and co-written by Tom Holland, not that Tom Holland, and produced by David Kirshner. Kirshner needed a team of experts to bring the devilish doll to life and called Yagher after a recommendation from the legendary Rick Baker. The development of the animatronics for the movie was a challenge.
There really wasn't any training for Child's Play. Animatronics was very young. It was in an infancy stage. There'd only been a few shows that even used animatronics. And the word animatronics comes from Walt Disney, from their work on the amusement parks, the robots. And we just took that and started using it in film.
To create this character, Kirshner started coming up with concepts for a doll named Good Guy Doll. Then he created another concept for a diabolic doll. He gave these concepts to Kevin Yagher, who put them together and created the final design for Chucky. Tom Savini created the sculpture so the molds could be created. The molds were used to make a fiberglass covering where the mechanisms that controlled the expressions would go. This animatronic could recreate countless expressions. So many that there were 3 puppeteers controlling the animatronic. The first one moves the eyes, the second one moved the eyebrows and cheeks, and the third one moved the mouth. The last one worked the hardest. This last one was the hardest because they used a mechanism that went over the animatronic's head to be able to control the jaw and use joysticks to control the lips. And had to coordinate the lips and jaw's movement to be able to simulate the words coming out of the animatronic's mouth. Another interesting aspect is that Yagher designed several stages of the characters so that it could be evolving throughout the movie and becoming more and more human. This helped the audience believe that the doll was really alive. There were many animatronics created for this character. There was one that was created so the character could walk. It had a motor that could be controlled by a remote control. And it allowed the animatronic to have a wide range of impressive and natural movements. There was another animatronic that was wired entirely and connected to joysticks, so that the puppeteers could have better control of its movements. Another pretty scary animatronic was the one created to move the burnt variation of Chucky, and there was the Tantrum Chucky, which was controlled by the motor of a drill that moved the animatronic's hands and legs to create the impression that Chucky was throwing a tantrum. All this work managed to create one of the most terrifying characters that created nightmares for a whole generation. Change Ahead, An American Werewolf in London. An American Werewolf in London is full of special and practical effects, thanks to Rick Baker's mastermind, which even led him to win an Oscar.
The winner is Rick Baker for An American Werewolf in London.
But undoubtedly, one of the effects that marked the decade of the 80s was the transformation from human to werewolf. For this transformation, 3 molds were created, one for each of the different stages of the transformation. Each mold was made with perfect detail, and it even had each hair inserted individually into the latex, so it looked more real. A special animatronic rig called Change Ahead was used to simulate the abrupt growth of the bones and face. To be able to do this, a new material had to be created. This material is called urethane, and it worked better because it stretched better than latex could. To be able to achieve this scene, the team worked for months. It was filmed in a matter of minutes, and it only lasted 5 seconds. The animatronics was part of Prop Store's collection for a long time, but nowadays it doesn't appear anymore on the page, so it was probably bought by a collector. This animatronic got Rick Baker an Oscar and helped bring to life one of the most iconic scenes in cinema. Gremlins 2 Gremlins.
Hello everyone, I'm the big new star of the big new movie, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, and here's someone very special to tell you all about it.
Rick Baker is a legend and a pioneer in special effects. With 7 Academy Awards, he is undoubtedly one of the best creature creators in history. One of his most recognized works are the Gremlins 2 Gremlins. When Joe Dante was developing the script for the film, Chris Wallace, the original creator of the Gremlins, was not available, so Dante wanted Rick Baker to be in charge of creating the Gremlins. Baker didn't want to work in the project because he considered that it would be too much work for something that wasn't even his own creation, and he didn't want to duplicate Chris Wallace's work. After all, in the first film, all the Gremlins that were created were made from the same mold except for Stripe. Dante insisted and asked Baker what he could do to make the project more attractive to him so he would want to be involved. Baker asked to redesign the creatures a little bit and wanted each of the creatures to be its own character, with each of them having different attributes and personalities. That's how Vegetable, Electric, Phantom, Greta, and all the other Gremlins came to life. For these Gremlins, puppets and telemetric animatronics were used. These animatronics were handled by many technicians. A puppeteer controlled mechanical arms that replicated these movements in the animatronic automatically. The neck movements were controlled by other puppeteers with a joystick. There were also many computer effects used for the characters, especially for the Gremlins' expressions. Baker's work for the film was amazing, and fortunately, almost all of the animatronics are still in this prop store in Los Angeles. And even better, they are sometimes put up for auction for collectors. The last auction was back in 2015. Baker loves selling his props to collectors because he rightly considers them treasures and thinks it's better for the props to be displayed than stored. The Alien Queen. When Aliens was in development, James Cameron was very concerned because he knew that if the film only featured the creatures that Ridley Scott had previously used, the film would not be a great success. We should point out that in Ridley Scott's Alien, only one creature was used, and there were several techniques used to be able to make the creature more terrifying, and to hide that the creature was, of course, just a guy in a suit. This worked perfectly for most of the movie, but just at the end of the film, the effects didn't work as well as they did for the rest of the movie, and it was pretty disappointing. So, James Cameron knew he needed that element of surprise. That surprise came in the form of a giant animatronic alien queen, an uber alien that, in addition to serving as the ultimate adversary, completed the alien reproduction cycle, never fully explained in Alien. Cameron created the first sketch of the creature and the radical way in which it would work, which would involve hanging the creature from an overhead crane and stationing 2 stuntmen inside the midsection to operate the puppet's 4 arms. Other key functions would be controlled through external rods, wires, and hydraulics. And who better to make this come true than Stan Winston, of course. So Cameron contacted Winston and told him his plans.
And he came in with this insane idea. He said, got it, he had a painting of what the queen alien would be, and I did some reworking on it, and he said, we'll put 2 guys up in a suit, and we'll carry them on a crane, and it'll have 4 arms, and we'll do your puppeting things with the big legs, and it'll be 14 feet tall. And I'm going, this guy's out of his mind. And within a split second of me thinking this is insane, I'm also thinking, if Jim Cameron is thinking it, I think we can do it.
The final concept was done and then scaled up in profile and front views to determine measurements that would accommodate 2 full-grown men. On paper, the idea seemed sound. To test the concept in 3 dimensions and in full size, Stan Winston and his crew built what they called the Garbage Bag Queen, which was literally a foam core mock-up, skinned in trash bags and suspended from a crane in the studio parking lot. The next step was to sculpt a quarter-size queen maquette as a means of finessing the design prior to building it in full scale. Winston divided the sculpting chores among his core crew members. The whole crew took this model to England, where it was replicated in full scale. This task was pretty hard because back then, there were not as many technological advancements. So instead of being able to come up with the correct proportions by scanning the model, they had to do the calculations by hand. Once sculpted in full size, molded, cast in a lightweight polyfoam, and painted, the alien queen puppet was supported by a variety of rigs, depending on the shot, the required action, and the camera angles. In some cases, crews hung it by wires from a crane arm. In others, it was supported from below, mounted to a rigid bracket hidden within the bony vertebra of the queen's back. A series of power steering units controlled the hydraulically activated gross body pivots, left and right, forward and back tilts, and up and down neck movement. These queen body mechanisms were Stan Winston's introduction to hydraulics. The stuntmen would control all four arms, as well as the side-to-side movement of the tail, activated by exerting pressure on a footplate within the queen's hips. Up-down motion was hydraulically operated, while the tip of the tail was moved more simply, via attached to wires. 2 queen heads were built, one that was made of tougher, more durable material so that it could withstand the abuse, and a second, more fragile, lightweight version. Each was articulated with hydraulics and cable controls for the finer functions such as jaw action and snarling lips. The Hero Queen head had more functionality, including a tongue mechanism and head tilt capability. The Alien Queen required up to 8 operators, all coordinating their efforts to create an organic performance that seemed to come from a single mind. The conductor of that puppeteering orchestra was Stan Winston. And with this project, he had succeeded in building the largest, most complex puppet ever made for a film, and the project led him to form his biggest and most diverse crew. Pumpkinhead.
The scare comes from the setup and the build of the unknown and the shock of when it's going to happen. It's about, do you believe it? And do you believe that what it's going to do will harm you or kill you?
Whenever we hear Stan Winston, we automatically think of terrifying creatures. And what better way to create a new creature and tell its story than having Stan Winston as the director? So, in 1998, he made his debut as director of Pumpkinhead. This film, starring Lance Henriksen, tells the story of a man who invokes a demon in order to avenge the death of his son, but things don't go as planned as he finds himself having to fight the creature to stop it. For this film, Winston assigned a team of artists to create the terrifying creature so he could be able to focus on the story and direction of the film entirely. The team led by Alec Gillis, Shane Mahan, John Rosengrant, and Tom Woodruff Jr. designed Pumpkinhead as a humanoid demon with a very large angular head, withered facial features, and long clawed fingers. There's a long process in order to create a creature like this. It begins with a concept, which changed and took shape until it was approved by Winston. Then a life-size sculpture of the demon had to be created. For this, the team was divided into different tasks to have a better result. Then from the sculpture, studio artists and mechanics created a suit and head, which was worn on the set by Pumpkinhead performer Tom Woodruff Jr. To avoid wear and tear on the suit, Woodruff was glued into it at the start of the shoot day and remained in the foam rubber construct for up to 8 hours at a time. Before creating the final suit, several tests were done to see if the character's silhouette was working. A special rig was created for the hands of the creature, and the Woodruff Jr. suit was attached to a cable to facilitate its movement. These tests allowed Woodruff to play a great role during filming. He had control of the movements of the head, but all facial expressions were controlled with a remote control. Since the head of the suit was a pretty complex animatronic full of cables to be able to handle, from the eyebrows, eye, and lips to the articulation of the jaw. The last step was to paint the skin of the creature. For this, the FX team consulted forensic books to match the hues of dead flesh. With the suit ready, the team joined Winston on the set, and Pumpkinhead became a cult classic. Would you like to see more of these animatronics? Let us know in the comment. If you want to be one of the first people to watch our videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell button. Also, visit our Patreon to check out our rewards. For just $1, you can access our exclusive creepy and abandoned animatronic series. Just click here. See you next week.